Over the past year, we've seen an increase in the number of collectors in the masterpiece realm when it comes to Transformers. With the increase in demand, dwindling supply, that equation equals higher prices. Today I want to talk about some of the figures that are going up in price. They're getting harder to get and they're more expensive. I've made a video similar to this about a year ago, but that was more based on alternatives to the high price figures. Some of the figures on this list surprise me. Some aren't actually figures, but we're going to talk about all this coming up. First off, I want to say I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about combiners. Combiners are going to be expensive no matter what. They're made up of 5 or 6 different masterpiece figures combined, so if they're not pushing $400, $500, $600, then I guess it's a flop, right? But seeing as how most Toy World combiner constructors cost about $500 to $700, $800, they're gonna command about that price on the secondary market. Also, they did have some yellow and orange repaints that nobody was really so into, and those sold for $300. But the more paint apps and the more G1 it looks, the more expensive it is. So I was surprised to find that Unique Toys Bruticus and Abominus are still commanding around $400 online. So I was thinking they'd start to slip a bit because of all of the other options that are out there. For Bruticus, Abominus is still probably the best option out there, but they both command about a $400 price point, which is pretty impressive for those figures. Although we have bigger versions of Bruticus out there, this one still looks great for what it is, but there's not a better version of Abominus. Next up, we've got Unique Toys Sworder. Now, this figure came out around $100, and I remember it clearancing out at several places for $60, and now it's commanding over $200 for the figure. Now, part of that is because there's not another version of the Sandstorm out there in the third party that's a true masterpiece scale. And I know a lot of people have their qualms and negativities about it. I think it's an alright figure. It's not bad for what it does. It really doesn't present with the finish of some of the other figures out there, but it still gets the job done. Yeah, that's Unique Toys Sworder. Next one up on the list is Bad Cube Huff, and this is, in my opinion, the best Huffer out there, and it may still be the best one, even after Fans Toys puts theirs out. So a lot of people complain about certain aspects of the Fans Toys before it's even released, but this one looks good. Again, this doesn't have the paint and the presentation, but it's still the best option on the market today. That's why it's selling for $250 to $300. Next up, Bad Cube's Grump, and Bad Cube's Grump selling for about the $250 to $300 mark, and a lot of this is based on sold items in the past. I base my prices off what I've seen items sell for past, what you could actually get it for today, and those kinds of things. Find a rough estimate. They do sell in ranges, and there are some one-offs that you can get them a lot cheaper. But this guy is selling $250, $300 himself. The funny thing is, I've talked about this guy a lot. This is like my fun example of a $60 figure that shoots up to almost $300. The thing is, Fans Toys will eventually get around to doing this, I believe. But I wonder why hasn't Fans Toys even announced they're working on it, and I think it's because they don't really think they have competition. They're putting figures out, and every figure they're putting out, they have active competition. This is not active, this is dormant, they're not putting out any other reissues. Bad Cube seems to be dead in the water, although they put something out every once in a while, every blue moon. They're not on it with the reissues, making this guy hard to get and expensive. The next figure on the list isn't a figure at all, and wow, it just shocked me. I couldn't believe that this iGear Toys Teletran 1, it's the IGTF007, is still pulling $350 to $400 for the set. But I guess it makes sense. Nobody else has come out with a full, complete Teletran 1 Arc room. It's an entire room. It looks good. I like the way it looks. It gets the job done. Some people argue that iGear never really made stuff that was masterpiece. It never was big enough. And I could agree with that. You could argue that this is chug scaled and not masterpiece scaled. But I also could argue that you could put masterpiece figures in it and it would look fine. I agree that iGear was a bit smaller on everything they did. But on the flip side, do you really want this massive, huge piece? No, you can still use this with 9-inch figures. Next up, we have Make Toys Utopia that's still commanding almost $400. And I'll admit, it's a nice looking figure. But I never considered buying it because I felt it was too small. It's not even as big as what Hasbro put out at 2 foot tall. This is not 2 foot tall and commanding $400. But it's because it does have premium materials, premium paint, and it looks great. And it looks G1. It looks more G1 than the Hasbro Titan, which most people have in their collection. Why it's commanding $400 still. You know, I'm making this video about high-priced figures, and I already kind of have an idea of which ones are sort of high-priced. But I didn't realize the Make Toys Seekers have jumped up to $400 a piece in price. I thought they would like $250, $300, not $400. So that's pushing Takara pricing for their figures. Now I'm kind of hoping when Takara puts theirs out, these will start to drop in price a bit, and maybe I can pick some up. Or Make Toys has the gall to actually get out there and reissue these things. Come on, reissue them. It's gonna print money for them. Why not? But anyway, $400 a piece, kind of crazy. Next up we have the MMC Skylynx. It's just commanding about $400. It's made up of two parts. I think it's called the Magna and Inventa figures. But the thing about it is they came out for about $130 a piece, which is $260, and now they're commanding about $400. To me, that's not a huge appreciation on the secondary market. It's not even double the price, so it's not really that bad. It's a pretty good value, and you're really getting two figures in one. But at the end of the day, they're one figure. They need to be considered one figure. I don't like them splitting up themselves separately, and I would hope they could come out with a box set for like right at $200, but right now, for $400, it's the best one. There's also the Commander Class one from Hasbro that's out that looks pretty good, but this still dwarfs that Commander Class one, and it still looks very G1 to me. I don't think it's as stylized as a lot of people say. Next up is the Giga Power Gravatar, and I got to get these names straight. Giga Power names, I've got to get them straight here. But it's their version of Sludge, and most specifically the metallic one, but even the chrome one's commanding a price now. Because for whatever reason, Sludge is the hardest one to get out of all of the Dinobots. For all of the Dinobots, I don't understand. Maybe he's in the highest demand. Maybe he's just a fan favorite. But he is commanding the highest price out of all the Giga figures, 400 plus. And he's a good figure. I mean, I've got him. I actually had both versions, but I didn't really need two Gigas. And I do think I like the chrome better. But other people like the metallic because they feel it's more cartoon accurate. So it's kind of up to you. It's kind of up to your own personal preferences. Speaking of Dinobots, we've got to talk about Fans Toys, and it's really hard not to make this entire list all about Fans Toys. But with the Fans Toys Dinobots, I personally believe we're eventually going to see all of them reissued. Fans Toys has not said they will not do it. They've actually said they have plans on the horizon for a couple of them, not all of them, but it just seems like they're leaving a lot of money on the table by not reissuing them. And since they really did make a name for themselves with the Dinobots, that's where Fans Toys put themselves on the map. It wasn't their Quake Wave that put them on the map. It was the Dinobots. And for me personally, it was Soar. Now, Swoop's commanding about $350 to $400, and I have to say that it is the most tune-accurate G1 version out there, but I do think they'll come out with one with a premium paint job eventually, which is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for one with a higher-end, more premium paint job, but yeah, it's still a good figure. And their Stomp is commanding a really high price. So it's kind of interesting because when Fans Toys came out with a figure and they did like the G2 decos, sometimes the price went up on those, and then after a while they just fell and they're less than the average one. But when you do the EX or the X or whatever they call them, the X version, ultra shiny, these are really hard to get. Of course, they were made in smaller numbers, but I just like the extra bling bling, and I think a lot of other collectors do. The Fans Toys Bugs are still commanding about $300 a piece. I think the Forager's pushing $400, and the other two are still hovering around the $250, $300 mark. But it seems like you might want to try to get the set yourself, like buy it as a set. That might be the best way to go about getting them. I'm just actually surprised people are still paying over $1,000 for a set of 3 when you could get a set of 3 for about $100 now from the competitor that's not that bad. These aren't that much better, that much greater than the options out there from Bad Cube, and I believe it was MMC that made the other one. But those options are still out there, and yet these are still pricey. So next on the list with the Fans Toys here, we have Fans Toys Lupus. Lupus is one of those that Fans Toys came right out and said, we're not making them again. And that's the funny thing, is because they are continuing with these headmasters of these bots, these monster bots, and yet they're not going to make this one again. I don't know if they're going to do a 2.0 or what, but this thing was not very well received anyway. But now he's commanding almost $400. So it seems like the more time that goes by, the more expensive he is to get and the harder he is to come by. Now, I do promise you, I'm not actually going to just list every single Fans Toys figure made. That would just be a pointless. So I'm just picking the upper echelon, which is still quite a few. But Fans Toys Phoenix X and even the regular Phoenix are both commanding over $400 these days because there's no reissue in sight. Even though there's this clear version that's supposed to be made as like a KO from a secondary company that's being allowed by Fans Toys, it's nothing like having this one. And the X version itself is in higher demand, partially because of the great paint, partially because of the very, very low quantity they made. Next on the list is Apache, that he's supposed to be theoretically coming up for a reissue, but I have not seen any official news on that yet. But anyway, with the Apache, a rumor of a reissue, still commanding $350 to $400 on the secondary market, which is crazy. Now, I'm sure you're going to find like a one-off. Like I saw a couple where they sold for $200. So, you know, that's true. You could probably catch a good deal for $200 from a Facebook group or something. And this guy, with the rumor out there now that it's getting reissued, maybe this is a good time to catch one for a good price. But even if it's reissued, it's not going to get reissued for $130. It's going to be a $200 figure upon reissue, if not more. Fans Toys Hydra is another figure that got a lot of negativity when it came out. Like, I had mine, and I'm like, I don't understand why everybody's negative on this. What's all the negativity? I liked mine. I still like mine. But, you know, the funny thing is I never saw Hydra get a repaint or an X version or an M version or an L version or any of that stuff. So why not? Did I miss that? Or, again, why not? But I think it's a good-looking figure. And now he's commanding upwards of about $250 to $300. Not quite as much as some of the other ones out there. But still, I'm wondering why he doesn't get a reissue. Next up, we have the Fans Toys Quietus and the Quietus T. And the thing about this, both versions look great. I mean, I'm looking at both versions right now. They both look great. And the thing is, they're both commanding a high price. And the price that they command is in the $400 range. And the reason is that I think they've already done their reissues that they're going to do with this guy, and they're done. And aesthetically, he does look better than the X Transbots version that's out there. Although I don't think the X Transbots is bad. It's not the, if that's all you had, it wouldn't be the end of the world. Just these seem a little bit more premium, and the paint just blings a little bit more. And the thing about a Sovereign and the Sovereign M, okay, even though he got a reissue, and technically the M got reissued again, so there was 2 runs of the M theoretically, the problem is that nobody had time to get in pre-orders. Like, it's almost as if it didn't get a reissue for the vast majority of collectors that are out there. With a lot of these Fans Toys M's and stuff, it's almost as if, like, why did they even bother? I wanted one. I went to work. By the time I got off, they were sold out. What's the point? I can't even order one. That is a problem. You don't have enough for the collectors to get in on it, then it's really hard. The most of these pre-orders for the new figures coming out, you've got a month or so to get pre-orders in for the most part. But for the M, you have 28 minutes. So now I want to talk a little bit about X Transbots. And they should be on this list because in the past years, they've had a lot of offerings that were in very high demand and were selling for double, triple, quadruple the retail price on the secondary market. But you don't see that with X Transbots product right now. And there's one reason for that. It's because they do reissues. And I have to say, X Transbots is taking reissues to the next level and overdoing it. They are flooding the market with their product, which I would say it's not a bad thing, but on the flip side, it kind of is a bad thing. There are so many reissues for X Transbots. Where's the new stuff? if all they're doing is putting out reissues, they're not putting out all of the promises that they've given us, what point is it? What's the good of it? You're not going to carry forward the line. All you're doing is giving us more and more and more and more and more old figures. Where are the new ones? I think that's a big problem with X-Transbots, and I hope they straighten it out. And I could live with no more reissues for a couple years. Just give us new figures. And lastly, we got the Zeta or Studio Cell Unicron. I think it's a good figure. It's not the perfect figure, but it's a good figure. The thing is, the price shot up on this. I got mine for $250 at Show Z. I guess it was a sell or whatever. But now it's $400 everywhere just for retail. And on the secondary market, will probably go up a little bit more. Now, a lot of people are saying I'm not going to spend more than $400 on it because I've got mine pre-ordered and I'll get mine in about 6 months from when my pre-order comes up. I don't need it right now that bad. And I understand that. I have a feeling this figure will be one that's going to be on constant reissue and constant pre-order status forever. I think this figure is going to get made and made and made and made now that they worked out their legal kinks. So this is the Zeta or the Studio Cell one. But $400 retail on it kind of blows my mind. I think $250 was the perfect price for it. Let me know what you think about all of these expensive figures. What figures are out there that are commanding a high price I didn't talk about? I'm sure I just missed it. This is not an all-inclusive list, but I would actually like to know, just for fun, just for a quirky conversation, I want to know what else I missed that's commanding a ridiculously high price on the secondary market. Like and subscribe. Titanium Hanger out.